All right, I'll just start from the beginning. Um, so sorry for those that heard me already talk about this stuff, but all right, here we go again. Sorry, folks. So welcome everybody. This presentation is about birds with fish. For those of you who are here for the live session, we're around for questions afterwards for as long as there are questions. For those of you watching the recording, you can feel free to give me an email or a call if you have questions after watching the recording, or if you have questions for Keith, the same goes for him. We're open resources, so whatever you guys need from us in terms of getting involved in the project or wanting to learn more about it, we're here from you. I also want to give a quick shout out to Andrea, who's the Oregon Sea Grant Scholar, and she's moderating this talk, and she's associated with the Friends of Haystack Rock and the Haystack Rock Awareness Program. We've also had really gracious support from the Oregon Wildlife Foundation and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So just a quick sort of introduction. My name is Noah Delinajek. I am a graduate certificate student at Oregon State University, affiliated with the Seabird Oceanography Lab. And this is my graduate project. And Keith has jumped on our project as a very valuable asset. He's given us tons of information about the technical photography side of things, taking pictures of birds in flight with fish and such. So he'll be talking towards the end of this presentation and giving a bit of his background on things, and also available for more technical picture taking questions. So just a quick background on the lab that I come from. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but the Seabird Oceanography Lab at Oregon State is involved in seabird research all over the Oregon coast and internationally. Some of the projects that we're involved in are the common murre monitoring and nesting and diets at Yaquina Head in Newport. One of the biggest projects of the lab is cormorant ecology and behavior, and also the use of biologging tags for oceanic data. There's work done with albatross and fisheries interactions in the North Pacific Ocean, and we also have cool sort of communications things like pigeon gillnet nest boxes and live cams in Newport. But for today, we're going to focus on birds with fish, which is this community science photography project that you all are interested in. So what is Birds with Fish? Birds with Fish is a community-driven project attempting to engage coastal photographers like yourselves to get involved by going out and taking pictures and submitting those pictures to us to create a database. We're focused on collecting information about coastal birds' diets. So it doesn't necessarily have to be seabirds, but just birds that live by the ocean or in the mouth of an estuary or along the bay. Those are all things we're interested in. And in the long run, this project should provide coastal communities with really important information about both bird and fish presence and their interactions. So what inspired this project? Well, first and foremost, this is my graduate project. This research is going towards my graduate project. But basically, in 2020, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service decided that tufted puffins were not going to be granted protections under the Endangered Species Act. And in doing that, they identified some data gaps that they were concerned about. And that included chick diet, migration patterns of the Oregon birds, and genetics. Are the birds related to the Washington birds? Are the birds related to Alaska birds? Or are they their own population? And so we kind of were coming up with ideas about how can we address some of these questions related to tufted puffins in Oregon. And I was passionate about getting involved in a community science project. And one thing we identified was that getting an idea of what tufted puffins were eating during breeding season while they're in Oregon was a really important first step to understanding more about the birds here in Oregon. But just getting pictures of tufted puffins is great, which we do want. But we also decided that, well, understanding the diets of other birds along the Oregon coast can give us a lot of context for what's going on with tufted puffins. So we came up with this idea of Birds with Fish, encouraging photographers to get involved and submit pictures to us. Hopefully creating a broad database on what our birds are eating along the coastline. So just a quick sort of background on tufted puffins, because tufted puffins were really the species that we first talked about focusing on with Birds with Fish. In 1988, there were about 5,000 birds, 5,000 tufted puffins along the Oregon coast. And by 2008, U.S. Fish and Wildlife recorded about 400. That's a marked decline over the span of a few decades. And since 2008, sporadic surveys have kind of shown that the population has remained somewhat stable, but very low, somewhere around 400 or maybe even less. And there's been some things identified along the Oregon coast that might be impacting that, such as increases in the bald eagle populations or events like the blob, which impacted the California current fish stocks and ocean conditions pretty severely in 2015, I think it was. So over the span of 20, 30 years, the density of bald eagles, especially on the north coast of Oregon, has skyrocketed. And one thing that Seabird Oceanography Lab has been monitoring for the murre population at Yaquina Head is how are bald eagle disturbance events impacting murre nesting success. And so we decided that it might be important for us to consider that same question for tufted puffins at Haystack, which is arguably tufted puffin's most important colony remaining in Oregon. There's been some work done in the last 5 or so years from various folks in the Pacific Northwest, sort of considering the future of tufted puffins along the California current. And this was these are pictures from a paper in which a model was built considering climate change scenarios and how that might impact habitat suitability for tufted puffins up to 2050. And the outlook, given these models, is not ideal. And that sort of caused concern for we need to start figuring out what these birds are eating and how they're interacting with their habitats along the Pacific coastline sooner rather than later. So there has been a handful of research done in Alaska about what tufted puffin chicks consume up north. And these are pictures from a paper in 1997 showing the sort of diet composition of tufted puffin chicks around Alaska. And it's likely that some of the diet may be similar on the Oregon coast, but of course there's going to be differences, and those differences could provide really important clues for why birds in Oregon are not increasing in population numbers. So that kind of gets to my project, and so what we've done is we've created a website, which I'll show you guys in a second. that basically gives a little bit of information about our project, a little background, basically what I've just told you guys here, but also provides a submission form in which you guys can go on and submit your photographs. There's a few questions about location and date of your pictures, and these are what will create our database of what birds are eating in Oregon. So I will show you that website. So this is the website, and I think you guys can see the URL of the site, but it's also on the flyer, and maybe Andrea can blast it into the chat box for you guys as well. But this is where, if you want to be involved in the project, you will go to see project updates and also submit your pictures. So there's lots of information. You guys can go on the side and play around and read a little bit about what we're doing and background of the project. But the first thing to do if you're interested in submitting photographs is to go to the submitting a photo link. And on this page, we talk a bit about what pictures we can use and what pictures we can't use. And in general, it's worth erring on the side of optimism that your pictures could be used. We'd rather get more pictures of birds with fish that maybe in the long run we don't end up using because we can't ID, than not get pictures that maybe we could have used. So these are examples of very nice photographs that that have been submitted to us. Where it's really quite easy to ID the fish. But it's also worth noting that your pictures don't necessarily have to be quite of this quality to be worthwhile. If you can see the bird holding its fish and you can see the coloration or the physiology of the fish, it's worth submitting it to us. So once you've kind of read through the guidelines, and there are some, we do have some sort of technical considerations and ethical guidelines that you can read through. Keith's going to go over some of that stuff in this presentation as well. But there is a submission link. And the submission link is on the submission link page, of course. And you can go to this page here, which is a Google submission form. Because it's a Google submission form, there are some data limits. You can only upload 10 photos at a time, but generally I haven't had folks submitting more than that. If there are folks that have large archives of pictures that they would like to submit to the project, it may be better to contact me personally, and we can set up some other kind of data transfer. I don't know that the Google form would be useful if you're submitting, 100 pictures from the same location and dates. But if you have, 8 or 9 pictures from one location and 8 or 9 pictures from another location, this is the link that you will use to submit your photos. There's a lot of text on the site and a lot of text on the form. And I know that that's irritating sometimes, but most of it is just sort of reminders about what to submit, what not to submit, just the basics of the project. And so things that we'll ask you when you're submitting pictures will be the location for each image that you've submitted, the date, if you have the relative time of day, or if that information is included with the data within the image file, that's okay too. And then other important things about the photo. So if you took a photo somewhere and you have sort of some anecdotal background that might be useful in interpreting the picture, that's great too. Like, you took a picture of a bird with fish over a hatchery. That's important as well. So that's the site basically. And if it is live now, the site is finally live. We just launched it. So go on and play with it. And like I said, if there's questions or concerns about it, feel free to contact me, and we can chat about how to fix stuff or get around any impasses. Also, with image submission, there's always issues. So if you do run into submission issues, just email me and we can set up a different way for you to submit pictures to the project. So I'm going to go back to the presentation now. So I've had a lot of questions from folks about what are we interested in, what are we not interested in, and that's really important to us. So we're interested in all birds along the Oregon coast, and that includes the brackish water zones of estuaries and bays. Things to consider when you're going through your photographs and might want to submit stuff to us is, can the bird be clearly identified at the species level? And can the fish or marine invertebrate that it's carrying also be identified at the species level? And that last question is more for us on our side of the project for us to figure out. But, just make a good judgment call about, it looks like this could be ID'd. But like I said, submitting more photos than less photos is better for us. Things that we are not going to use in this project are pictures of birds carrying fish or prey from freshwater sources. We're also not interested right now in pictures of birds from interior ecosystems. So if you have a picture of bald eagle over Hood River, that's not something that we could use in this project. And on that same note, pictures of birds that are not carrying any prey are also not something that we can use in this project. That said, submitting photos to us of raptors that have captured seabirds, for example, those kinds of pictures we could theoretically take some important information from. So that specific event, you should feel free to submit those as well. So I think Keith's going to talk about some things to consider when taking pictures in the field a bit more than I am, but I'm just going to reiterate it first. In a project like this, where we're calling on folks to go out in the field for us, take pictures, it's important to maintain safe distances from the wildlife. We don't want to be responsible for taking an awesome picture that led to a disturbance that may inevitably lead to nest abandonment or something like that. It's also worth considering that capturing pictures of birds with fish is not necessarily an easy photographic task. So kind of considering when you're going out to take pictures, both ecologically and in terms of lighting, is worthwhile. I will note that we're interested in IDable pictures of birds with fish as far back as you have them. So I've had a few folks email me and ask, are you interested in pictures from 2010? Absolutely. In fact, if Grandpa left you a box of pictures of tufted puffins on the Oregon coast that are carrying fish from 1970, and you can ID the fish, we want those too. So the bigger time range we have on these pictures, the more sort of patterns we can take from the data that we get. And most importantly, the prime time for taking pictures is right now. So I realize that this seminar is happening sort of right in the middle of the season, but there is about 4 to 6 weeks left where we might get useful pictures this season. And if you're on the coast or you're planning a trip to the coast, or you need a reason to plan a trip to the coast, taking pictures of birds that are carrying fish through the end of July and August is our sweet spot for this project. So I'm going to turn this over to Keith now. And Keith, maybe you can just tell me when to switch slides, and I'll switch slides for you.
Yeah, sure. So a little bit about me. Sorry, I'm a little mobile this week, so I'm not where I'm usually at, but I'm a professional wildlife photographer for Olympus, and I basically specialize in bird behavior and conservation. So I work a lot with other nonprofits and conservation projects similar to this, just to give a voice to those animals that don't really have the ability to do that for themselves. I've worked on a similar project to this with the Cascade Red Fox in Mount Rainier. So this project really hits home for me. I love working on it, and any expertise I can give to this project is, something I'm really happy about doing. And I think that when we're talking about photography for birds specifically, ethics is a big thing that we need to talk about. So Noah, if you want to go to the next slide, a little bit about bird photography in general is anytime you're about to change the behavior of a bird, you're probably too close and you're going to want to back up. But a lot of people see the change in behavior. They're trying to do the right thing and they back up very suddenly and fast. And that's usually going to make the bird get startled even more. So backing up slowly and very, very quietly is much more advantageous in that sense. These are a few examples of kind of, photography that you can get on the Oregon coast. It's a vast array of species, especially during breeding season. It's a lot of fun to kind of capture a lot of different species all in one day. So especially if you're looking for a place to go that you can not only help this project, but see a lot of different species, the Oregon coast is a great place to do that. Go ahead. So some just general tips that I like to give photographers, even if you're an experienced wildlife photographer or if you're starting from scratch, I think these are all very important things to kind of touch on. And shooting in RAW is the big one, especially when you're trying to ID birds and fish within a photo. If you're shooting at a small file size, it's going to be a lot harder for Noah and his team to zoom in and figure out what species that might be. So shooting in RAW and using a photo editor to kind of clean up what you need to is definitely recommended. And overexposing an image is generally better than underexposing it. So specifically because this is a project where, they don't need gallery quality photos. They just need something that's going to ID a bird and a fish. We would want you to err on the side of overexposure because you can pull those details out by, shifting it back to the right light. And that's a technique I use a lot, and it's a very highly sought after technique that a lot of people use, and it's called exposing to the right. So always err on the side of brighter rather than darker. Another thing that you can do to kind of retain detail is shooting with a tripod. It'll always help you keep steady when you're tracking birds in flight. And that brings me to kind of my other tip with birds in flight specifically and tracking birds, especially at long focal lengths. It becomes difficult to find a bird in your frame every now and again. And a trick that I use is actually to keep both eyes open. And it will definitely feel weird in the beginning, but it lets your brain kind of readjust to where you are in your surroundings and also where you're at in your lens. So play with that and make sure that, you feel comfortable, but it does definitely help me track birds in flight a little bit better than if I have just one eye open. Noah touched on it a little bit earlier, but shooting at dawn and dusk is a great way to get the best behavior and light for birds. That goes for any animal, actually, but shooting at dawn and dusk, specifically at Haystack Rock, is somewhat tricky. The dusk side of Haystack Rock is all backlit, so it becomes a little bit washed out and a lot harder to get usable photos. But it's also one of the bigger times where you're going to see the behavior that, this project needs to have photographed. So it's kind of a catch-22. I err on the side of dawn for Haystack Rock, but I know Noah has shot some amazing photos at dusk out there. So it's all personal preference at that point. As Noah knows, I have forgot many memory cards on occasion, but always having an extra one and extra batteries in the field is kind of key to being able to take the photos that you want to take and get the photos that Noah needs for this project. And to talk a little bit more about the ethics here, specifically at Haystack Rock, it becomes a little bit of an issue because there's that marine garden right in front of the rock. And sorry, I guess I didn't put this all on a slide, but there's that marine garden right in front of Haystack Rock, and a lot of folks like to climb on it to get closer to the wildlife and the birds. And you're actually killing, hundreds and hundreds of microorganisms and very important things to the ecosystem out there. So just making sure that you listen to the signs and, looking for the folks in red that work for A-Trap that can tell you where to step is always going to be a good thing to do. As far as reading birds' behavior, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but they're going to show you how close they want you to be to them. Specifically at Haystack Rock, there's nesting oyster catchers, and they definitely get very loud when you get too close, and that's kind of your cue to back up. So I think it's as much about learning their behavior as it is just simply respecting wildlife in general. And that's kind of all I got. I can talk very in-depth in the tech side of photography, but I want to open that up for questions in a little bit here rather than dig into the weeds with that.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Keith. I'll just kind of reiterate that ethics note you said one more time. My data that I'm taking for this project is really focused in Cannon Beach at Haystack Rock, because I want to get as many pictures of puffins with fish as I can. But for some of you, you may be taking pictures at other locations along the coast, and considering what Keith said about kind of understanding your ecological surroundings. Certainly we don't want to disturb the birds, but there's also a lot of other parts of the ecosystem that you may be sort of getting too close to, or maybe walking over entirely. So just, we want your pictures and we want you guys to be involved in the project, but it's really important to consider, making sure you're not negatively impacting other wildlife while you're trying to take pictures of the birds. So with that, I will say thank you again to everybody that's shown up for this talk, as well as our very long list of supporters, all of whom we could not include on this slide. If we're around for questions right now, but if you think of questions later on that you want to ask either myself or Keith, just reach out to me. If it ends up being a question for Keith, I can just forward it his way. Yeah, thanks for listening. So we will open it up for questions at this point.
There's a question from Roy on the comment section.
Okay. Can you read it to me?
Yeah, he said you only want photos during the breeding season. So are you not looking for photos of loons, grebes, scooters, ducks, shorebirds, etc.?
Oh yeah, good question. So we are prioritizing breeding season because for me in my first season of this project, I'm really focused on tufted puffins and murres and sort of the Alcid side of seabird diet. However, we're interested in all birds in all seasons. So certainly if you have pictures of all of those birds that you've listed with fish along the Oregon coast in different seasons of the year, we want all of those. The more pictures we can get throughout the entirety of the year, the more robust the inference that we can make from this project will be.
He also shared another comment saying that he submitted photos of MERS to the OSU monitoring program last year. So he's wondering if you need or don't need those.
Those I do not need because I'm closely affiliated with that project. So if you've submitted pictures of MERS to the Yaquina monitoring project, I have access to those. But if you have pictures of MERS from other locations on the Oregon coast, or ones that you have not submitted to that project, those I am interested in.
And once you've analyzed the photos, are you going to tell them what you ID the fish as? And will you be doing a follow-up after they submit?
That's a great question. And I don't necessarily have an answer for it yet. I think it kind of depends on the buy-in to the project. So if we have a crazy amount of buy-in and people are submitting a lot of pictures, it'll be a challenge to respond to individual submissions. But what we will be doing is periodically updating the project website with the results. So sort of towards the end of the summer breeding season and fledgling season, once we have all the pictures from that, I'll spend some time going through that and creating that database, and then I will post an update about it. Then if we get a bunch of pictures in the fall, I'll go through those pictures and then sort of update. So maybe sort of like quarterly updates on what the data looks like from the project, but it's to be determined, but something along those lines.
Great. And to answer Edward's question, yes, we will be uploading this recorded presentation on the project website. And we also have another question on any tips on how inland weather may predict clear skies at Haystack Rock.
Whoa. Not really. I don't know. Keith?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about it. I live in Seaside, so just about 15 minutes away from Cannon Beach, and the weather is vastly different where I live in contrast to Cannon Beach. It'll be, sunny and great in Seaside, and then it'll be, a very heavy, thick marine layer in Cannon Beach. I find that it has a lot to do with the fact that Cannon Beach is kind of a little bit lower in the realm of how the coastal environment works. So it's kind of like a weird little valley where you drop down and it just kind of sits in there. And I can assure you that whatever the weather says in Portland has absolutely nothing to do with what it says in Cannon Beach. So my recommendation is to download the Windy app, and that can give you a little bit of more scientific data around the weather patterns at Cannon. It'll let you put like fog overlays and visibility ranges. So that'll kind of point you in the right direction, but it's really best to, if you have a local contact, you can just text or email and say, hey, what's the weather looking like today? Because it changes every 5 minutes out there.
Thank you. And another question from Holly. She's saying if there are any tips on file size of the photos that they will be uploading.
Well, so the submission form itself has a 10 file limit. And, I think that files 25 megabytes and smaller are fine. It may even be bigger than that. I'm not certain. we'd rather not get images that are really large because it's harder for us to process that. But at the same time, it's more about what's convenient for you guys, and as long as we're getting submissions of pictures in which we can do what we need to do, the file size is fairly irrelevant.
I think to kind of piggyback on that is making sure that you're exporting out of a big file is key. As long as it's a high resolution file, it's not going to really matter if it's 2 megabytes to 10, as long as it's from that high res. It'll make life easier. But what I would recommend, I don't know what your limit on the Google form is for file size, but I know it's 10 files. If you keep the file size under 10 megabytes, it'll make life very easy.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, question from Edward. What's the timeline of your project and need for photographers?
So timeline for the project is anytime you can get out to the coast and take pictures of birds and fish, we want them. This is the pilot season of the project, and it's our goal to run this next year and hopefully for a long time. So in terms of the tufted puffins, which is sort of my personal species focus, getting pictures between June and August is sort of the sweet spot. And right now, sort of from right now to the middle end of August is really prime time to take pictures of puffins with fish. But in terms of the broad spectrum of coastal bird species, there is no real timeline. If you're at the coast and you take pictures of a bird with fish in November, that's useful information for us. So, there's sort of a push. I'm sort of trying to push folks to take pictures in July and August of birds in breeding season, but we want pictures from all times.
Thank you for that, but I should have not used the term timeline, but I should have used the term, I meant deadline.
Okay, I see. Yeah, again, no real deadline. So, this project hopefully will run for a while, and we'll update it periodically. So, submitting your pictures when's convenient for you is great. The more pictures we get, the more robust our data set gets. And so when I do project updates for you guys on the website, the more pictures I do have, the more data you guys will be able to see and kind of how the project is going. But there's no real deadline on when to submit pictures from each season. I don't want to demand that from folks. So if you can submit your pictures from each season, at the end of that season, that's fantastic and that's ideal. But it's really when it's convenient for you guys.
Thank you. And MC is wondering if they will be able to retain ownership of their photos and if they will be getting photo credit.
Great question. So I am in the process of updating the Google submission form, which will include permission requests. So you'll have the option, if you submit pictures to the project, of for scientific use only, in which case your picture will never see the light of day. It will just be used within our database to ID the bird and the fish. You'll have the option of the picture being used for science and outreach. So things like presentations, on the project website. And then you'll also have the option for science education and outreach, in which we can use it for things like marketing materials for the project, brochures and things like that. In any case that you give permission for use of the photo, in the project, you will always get photo credit. So we'll never, we're not asking for permission to take credit of the picture. We're really just asking for permission to use it. And if you do give permission for us to use it on the site or brochure or something, you will get photo credit.
Thank you. And if anyone has any more questions, feel free to unmute yourself and just state your question or write it in the comment section.
When do you want us to start uploading photos? When will you be ready?
I'm gonna throw that permission thing into the Google submission form today. So I'd say starting tomorrow, submission of photographs is open.
Well, not as good as Keith, that's for sure. But sometimes I
neither.
get lucky. And I do not live anywhere near Cannon Beach, so I will not be getting photos of tufted puffins, but other things, which hopefully you can use.
Totally, absolutely, anything, really, really, truly, any coastal bird is really useful to us. So, you know, I mean, like I said, I'm really focused on tufted puffins and personally, but this project is designed to create a database for all coastal birds. So, you know, really, all pictures are useful for this project. So we appreciate everybody's buy-in and submissions.
Finally, a use for all those bird photos.
Exactly.
I think everybody else is thinking the same.
Right. It's just how badly do you want to go through the archives is a real question.
I will be putting the Noah's email in the chat box just in case you guys have any questions after this presentation or you have anything that you want to reach out with. And did you guys get the blog link as well? I can also recopy that on.
I have another quick question.
Yeah.
I have this great photo. I don't know if you care about mergansers, but a merganser swallowing a fish. But the thing is, I didn't get the photo in time to see the whole fish. Can you still identify fish by like tails and fins and things like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, I should have touched on that. Ideally, we want a picture. You know, the ideal scenario is a picture of a bird from head on, where you can see both ends of the fish. However, a lot of times we can still make an ID if we have just the head or just the tail. So certainly, if you have pictures where there's half a fish in the mouth of the bird, those are worth submitting 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Anybody else have questions?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Yes, as far as the submissions goes, if you're going to use it online, I add it to sRGB. That has the best, truest color form for online. But if you're going to print it, it just would come in straight JPEG. So when I submit pictures, I'll submit both edited in both different forms.
Sure.
And you can choose, to print JPEG or to use on the internet as RSGB, and it'll be labeled such and such to, to get the highest quality of image.
Okay. Keith, do you know?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. It's not going to be necessary, I don't think. Many times with printers nowadays, I mean, I don't know who you print through or what your technical background is, but many printers, especially high quality printers, very easily read sRGB in their CMYK plate readers.
Oh,
So,
no, I know they can read it, but your DPI is way less in sRGB.
right. I mean, one is
it's
DPI, one is
can be
PPI. So it does get complicated. I just think if you're submitting double photos, it could get fairly complex for Noah's team to sort through duplicates over and over again.
Yeah.
So I would suggest submitting the sRGB, because primarily these would be used online. And I think Noah could easily reach out if he was planning to print one and get the TIFF file or the native
all right.
print file that you would
Right.
like them to use.
Yeah, I think that's smart, Keith. That
Okay. All right. Fine.
I think we probably
No
won't
problem.
probably won't be doing any printing. I mentioned brochures, but that would be the only thing. And I don't even know if there's really a reason for us to do that. For the most
Right,
part, we use the pictures on the website and on, when I give talks about the project and stuff like that. So it will mostly be digital versions.
Okay. Well, now I've been involved with doing some, displays at wildlife centers, or, where you got a big board that has all the different birds there.
Yeah.
You know
In
what
the
I mean?
event we
Which
do
I
something like
guess
that.
my experience. Right. I'd recommend it because people, 99% of the people are totally unaware of birds in the coast or whatever. So the more information that you can pump out there, I see people going to those boards, quite often at different places on the coast, or Wales or whatever.
Yep. Agreed.
So I don't know if that's in the budget or what.
We'll see.
Do you have a budget, or
Yeah. So this first
What
season
is it?
this first season was funded through a small grant by the Oregon Wildlife Foundation, and actually they're currently running a crowdsourcing campaign for donation-based funding, hopefully to fund a second season and see where it goes from there. So it certainly seems like we'll have the funding to run the project through this whole first year and next summer. And from where it goes from there, it's funding dependent, like all ecology.
Right. So are you tied in at all with the snowy plover or the God, no, I forgot the name of the bird. The other endangered bird that flies way in from the coast. Are you
Marbled murrelet?
Yeah, murrelet. Yeah. Are you tied in with those programs at all, or that's separate?
That's separate. There's tons of different bird monitoring research that Oregon State is involved with. And,
right. No, I know.
Yeah. So Doug, I think you're thinking Audubon. This is separate from the Audubon monitoring efforts. Some part.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. I'm just curious. So basically, I missed the first part of the meeting. We're looking at bird diet quite extensively. So whether it be mussels or clams or crabs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Fish, marine invertebrates.
All right, sounds good. All right, we can do that.
Great.
Any more questions?
Yeah, you lost me on the sRGB. I shoot in RAW, but and JPEG. And I tend to just focus on the JPEG and play around with that. Is that okay?
Totally.
Okay.
Yep, that's fine.
Like I said, I'm really, really amateur, and I was gifted a nice camera, but I don't know how to use the software that came with
Yeah. Hey, I'm with you.
So I take the easy way out.
I'm with you. That's why Keith joined the team, because he's my photography like savant. So
Keith, if you ever do a class like on site, I'm there.
I definitely offer them. They're in the works, getting planned out for next year's puffin season right now.
So just to clarify, sRGB, you can actually shoot that within your camera, or when you process it on your computer, there's a section that you can turn that into from a JPEG to an sRGB. It's just a different colors scheme. That's all it is. It's nothing difficult.
Okay.
You just press a button and the software does it itself. It's not
okay.
difficult. It just creates a really smaller file. You'll take a JPEG file with maybe 10 or 12 megabytes and take it down to maybe 700 kilobytes. So that's all it's doing.
Mhm.
Makes it
All right,
easier.
you're gonna
when
make me get
you're
my
loading,
manual out, aren't you,
uploading
Doug?
stuff.
Anyway.
No, it really is not that difficult.
Yeah.
I've taught it to many people, so it's not that difficult. Okay, well, I'm gonna leave now. I'll look forward to your email about the portal, and I'll send you some fish shots and crab shots, and
great. Thank you very much. Appreciate
snowy
it.
plover. Snowy plover eating sand shrimp. You want something like that?
All of it. All of the above.
All of it.
Hey.
Okay.
Doug, before you leave, can you write
right,
down
sounds
your
good, Doug.
email in the chat?
Can I?
Yeah, I think you have.
Because somebody's
access
already
to the
got
chat.
it. I've been.
Oh, okay. No worries then. I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure we had your contact. Great.
Yeah. I've been emailing a few times already.
Okay.
Okay,
great.
perfect.
All right. Well, good. Great luck with your project.
Thanks, Doug.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Bye-bye.
Anybody else have any questions? I think we're gonna sign off here pretty soon.
No, it's been useful, and I hope you can use some of my photos
Yeah. of
in
course.
whatever format they turn out to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. And like I said, if you have any questions for Keith and I, just reach out. And this presentation will be on the Friends of Haystack Rock, the Haystack Rock Awareness Program, and our Birds of the Fish Project website. So if you need to go back and get some information or answers to one of these questions, the feed will be available.
Thanks, Noah. Good luck with your project.
Thanks, Edward.